My question is about John Wetton.
Yeah.
I've read so many different things, but I'd love to hear from you, sir, about when you first met him and when you knew he was going to be such an irreplaceable presence in the King Crimson legacy. Thank you so much.
I was at college with John. Bournemouth College at Niverton Road. I was taking 3 A-levels to go on to university in London and take a degree in estate management, real estate in American terms. And John was there studying something or other. And we both had a semi-pro background with groups, beat groups as they were called then, in the Bournemouth area. And John worked with an organist who we called the Singing Pig. I mention that only in passing. And then we both went our ways and ended up in London, John with family and me with King Crimson. And when the first Crimson broke up in '69, I called John Wetton as a replacement for Greg Lake, but John had just joined family. So we moved on to 1972, when King Crimson had broken up again. And I was in my cottage in Holt, and I leant out the window. Now, bear in mind, if I were in my cottage in Holt, it was very rare that I was leaning out of the window on the first floor, American second floor, looking out at the street. I have no idea why I did. But I did, and there was a rather flashy car, which John had borrowed, and there was John. And we met. And not long afterwards, I gave him a call. And John said yes. John was in England, and I believe in Europe, and I believe on an international scale. John was the bass voice of his generation, and the only player who, for me, had similar authority was Jaco Pastorius. John was utterly astonishing. It's a matter of record, mainly by John himself, very honourably and graciously, acknowledging the personal difficulties he had with substance abuse. And through the difficult years, I stayed in touch with John as a friend and would visit him at his house in Bournemouth, where he moved. But when John went into the fellowship and lived his life one day at a time, when you live your life one day at a time, it's on the razor's edge. There's no room for deviation. And with that, John, after 2007, I had conversations at a depth and intimacy that we had never had before. And then the news came in. That John had cancer, and it was terminal. And John had about a year. Except his treatment brought it down to 3 weeks. There was a screw up, and John developed sepsis. And I visited John and his wonderful wife. About 3 weeks before he flew away. and John was in a good place, it would be easy to say that John's latter years were in some way, tragedy is maybe too hard a word, but my view of John's later years were that they were a triumph. And whenever I hear or play the opening guitar line on Starless, there is always a something for me, and it's never far from John.